Okay, everyone. Thanks for joining. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. We'll go ahead and get started. Just wanted to quickly thank you guys for joining. Looks like we have quite a bit of attendees where we want to be able to get all your questions answered. You have attended what we call MVP Office Hours. And so MVP Office Hours is a forum where Salesforce administrators and developers can get assistance with any topic. The whole reason that we created MVP Office Hours was because you have answers, you have blogs, you have communities, and there's this element of support that we saw needs to be addressed in the community, which is problems that actually require dialogue. So this is the forum we create for that. And so that being said, there are a couple of ground rules. So if you're not speaking, please mute, as all the lines are open. And then if you do have a question which you'd like answered, please go ahead and raise your hand using the panelist icon. And then if there are no questions raised by the attendees, we will start picking on folks. So like I mentioned earlier, my name is Joshua Hoskins. I am a solution architect at Perio. I am currently based in London, and I've been an MVP for a couple of years, mainly supporting the social community as well as the user group community. So I think we have a couple of other MVPs on the line. So if you want, go ahead and raise your hand. I do have my trusty co-presenter, Steve Moe. I think everyone's a big fan of Steve Moe. So Steve Moe, I don't even know if that introduction does any justice, but go ahead and tell people who you are and what you do.
Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Moelis, or if you are in the Answers community, you might know me as Steve Moe. I'm a Salesforce admin here at Epsilon. I've been the admin since we rolled out Salesforce in August of 2003. So you can cut me open like an old tree and count the rings.
Nice. Thanks for stepping in, Steve. Jared's currently on holiday, like I mentioned earlier, so he's probably off with Brittany, probably enjoying some exotic place. Do we have any other MVPs on the phone? If you guys want to go ahead and raise your hand, we'll shoot over to you as well. We're missing the regulars like Deepa.
Yeah.
Joshua. Yes.
Hi, this is Susan Thayer. I'm an MVP out of Omaha, Nebraska. I don't have anything funny to say like Steve did.
Okay, glad to have you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? All right. Let's go ahead and get started then. So we have a couple of other folks on the line, so I'll just name them. So we've got Jessica, we've got Catherine, and we've got Libby, and we've got Minaxi. So do one of you guys have any questions you would like to see if we have answers to? You can either throw them up in the chat or just unmute yourself and let's get going. Okay, Jessica, you're out there?
I'm here.
Cool. How are you?
I'm great. I guess I do have a question. It's more of a general question. It involves multi-select pick lists.
Sure.
I'm kind of looking for an alternative to using the multi-select. Actually in our company I kind of came in as a new admin. I've only been doing this for about 4 months now. And so I have a lot of legacy stuff that's already sitting out there that I'm trying to clean up. And apparently the org is very big into using multi-select pick lists, which I'm having a lot of trouble with because now they're wanting to add new features to it, and you can't adjust those a lot. So basically they have a multi-select pick list that has a lot of different choices in there, and they want to be able to to add like notes to each selection they choose. And I don't want to do 20 different single pick lists. I'm trying to just look for some alternatives as to what would work, which would be easy for the users to do because they're not big into going to a lot of different places, but something that will also be easier to report on and more user friendly.
Ooh.
Just to give us an idea, how many values can one person select at a time? How many values do you have in there? And then how many values is it really possible for to select on one go?
24. I have 24 values in there, and as far as I know, they can pick all of them if they want to.
Okay.
It keeps getting added to the list, and maybe we can cut it down some for stuff that they're no longer using. But I know that it looks like I pulled a report and just to look at the field, and it looks like some of them are picking up to 8 choices. I mean, there's available 24, but it looks like most of them aren't going over 8.
Okay. And can you explain a little bit about what these options are, maybe a little bit about the process?
Oh, sure. It's in the task. It's a task basically. We go out and do practice visits to different physicians, and basically the pick list says what they talked about, some different features that are offered through the company. So if they said we talked about X, Y, and Z, then they're going to click on X, Y, and Z. If we talked about ABC, then they're going to click on ABC. Sometimes it's just one because they only talk about one thing, and sometimes they talk about 10 different things. So.
But for each item, they want to be able to say specifically what they spoke about for that one topic?
Not necessarily that, but they kind of want to talk about, we're trying to get further into time management, so they kind of want to put like how much time they spent on it.
This is Steve. When you say you're doing this for tasks, are you using the standard task, like the activity object, or is this a custom object that's being used for this specific task?
No, it's the standard task object. I mean, we've built it. It looks like they've built it out some, and added things to the page layout.
Okay, that kind of eliminates or cancels out, unless you're really going to get into some heavy development, creating a custom object to make each of the multi-pick list values a line item that's a separate record that can be attached to the task. But that's not going to, you're talking about some like really hardcore re-engineering. The fact that you said that like your average is 8.
Yes.
All right. But there's up to 24 options?
Yes.
Yeah, see, the fact that you have 24 options, you're really getting beyond what's feasible for converting the multi-pick list values into checkbox fields. I'm a big proponent of checkbox fields, but even as much as I love them over multi-pick list fields, I mean, I love anything more than multi-pick list field. I think that they're just horrible. That's way too many checkboxes. You're going to be creating a new problem to solve an existing problem, and that solution. Ooh, I mean, the fact that you're on the activity object really limits what you can do with like declarative development, like creating a custom object and attaching it to the task object. If you could analyze the data on your existing records and see if there's any trends, like, okay, when they pick option A and B from the multi-pick list, they tend to also pick E, F, and H. If you could analyze the data, you might be able to do something using a combination of checkboxes and dependent pick list fields, and kind of break that one multi-pick list into like logical chunks. Now, unfortunately, you might run a report, and there may be no logical grouping. It could be that these 24 values are just thrown up in the air, and any user can just pick any 5, 6, 7, 8 or more of them, and there is no rhyme or reason. I think, I mean, your hands are really tied by the object that the field is on, and the number of values. I think like Josh, feel free to chime in. I think that you got to take a step. I would take a step back and analyze the data that you've collected using this multi-pick list field, and try and see if there's a trend in how it's being used and the values that are selected, and try and frame your solution around that if possible. It's not, there's a custom app out there that does something with multi-pick list fields, but it's a relatively new app. I don't have a lot of experience on it with it, and the fact that you're using an activity, that might be a deal breaker for using that custom app. While we're on the call, I'll go onto the App Exchange, see if I can find the name of the app and post a link in the thing for you to at least check it out.
Okay.
This is Susan. I wanted to add something to that. You mentioned that in your scenario, you're using this multi-select pick with the goal of determining how they're spending time on their calls and tasks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That's not uncommon. Typically, when your end users are looking for reporting, or management are looking for reporting, they're not going to be able to digest or talk about 8 different things. And people on a call really can only talk about a handful of things at one time, which is why you're probably not seeing more than 8 selected in any given call. One solution is to talk to your business users and say, would you rather have the top 1 or 2 topics that they were asking about, and then maybe have 2 pick lists. So pick list 1 would be main topic, and then pick list 2 would be secondary topic. Then you'd have them be able to pick from all 24 items, but they're only picking 2. And that gives you valid data that you can report on and take action on.
Okay. Now, would there be any, benefit or loss of benefits if I try to, do a custom object versus having them do this task? I mean, I'm not really sure why they picked this to begin with. Like I said, I came in on this already in existence. So, I mean, basically they're using it as log and call, but basically they're logging a visit. So they're going out there and they're visiting these places. Like I said, they did some heavy modification just to incorporate new fields and so forth to gather information that's valid to them. So would there be a benefit to just abandon the task completely and just go to custom?
Yeah, I've seen people do a custom object, maybe you call it office visit or something along that line, where they can enter in all of their notes, all the topics. Yeah, it's going to depend on how much customization you need. And then you do lose some features down the road possibly if you're looking at other add-ons or apps that rely on the activities. And then your office visits wouldn't necessarily be in the activity kind of logical calendar feed, if that makes sense.
It does. I was kind of worried about that. We're not using the calendar right now, but I kind of think that there's going to be some value to it later. So I'm thinking, we might incorporate it into it later, at a later date, but I don't know how that's going to help us now.
Yeah. And you could have your second object, your custom object, and then still either have them manually do it or trigger a workflow to log an activity whenever they fill out the custom object called office visit.
Oh, that's true. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you both.
Sure, no problem. Cool. That was helpful for you. Steve?
I just saw Susan's.
I see. A little internal chat going on. You guys, I'll get that going on. So we've got Jessica. That's great. Catherine, you have a question up there, and it's called. Well, your question is, what are the best form third-party apps that integrate with Salesforce? I think it's a really good question. Yeah, so I would probably look for Steve and for Susan to weigh in. There's a couple that I know, but I think it really depends on the type of information that you're collecting and how you want it to interact with the person who's experiencing. Is it more survey, where people need to sort of respond to questions one at a time, or is it I need to basically give you a whole bunch of information and that stuff needs to be able to land inside of Salesforce? Which is it?
Well, we have DocuSign currently, and so it's more of a just, I guess maybe a survey, just kind of an online form that you would fill out on a website that we could make public. And it would have to meet certain, I don't know what the requirements are in particular, but I work for a company that is heavy on financial security. So it would have to meet certain encryption requirements.
Okay. Yeah, encryption always gets just data transition all the time always gets kind of tricky with information security rules, just because you have to make sure that the company is really not storing any of that data and they're writing it directly to Salesforce. But I think that information probably isn't going to be readily available on the App Exchange. I think for some it might be, but what you want to probably do is probably settle on one that you like and then ask the question to the shortlist of you. But I'm sure Steve and Susan probably have some software. Steve?
I've never really used any App Exchange stuff for that type of thing, so I don't really have a lot of hands-on with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, I think that there's a couple, right? There's going to be like a survey perspective. It's get feedback. From a form perspective, there's another one called Squid, and that's like is Squid only for internal? Have you guys taken a look at that? I'm not sure if it's public facing. And then there's things like Wufoo, depends on what you need. I mean, I know that has a Salesforce integration as well, and that's all about forms.
Yeah, I've used Wufoo before, and that was a pretty good experience.
Yeah.
With a different company. But,
Susan? Anything come to mind?
I've always had good luck with Form Assembly. There's lots of different options there. Did you say it was more forms or more surveys? I kind of missed that part.
I guess more forms.
Okay. Yeah, then Form Assembly would be one of my go-to ones.
Okay, perfect.
This is Steve. I've never used it, but that's one that I've seen come up again and again with people saying really positive things about. In fact, I can't think of a time that I've ever seen anybody like in a discussion group say anything negative about Forms Assembly. From what I've seen, people are very, very happy with it that have used it.
Cool. Great.
Cool. No problem. Hope that was helpful, Catherine.
Yeah.
Cool. And moving on to the next person, we've got. I'm going to try not to butcher the name, but Minachi. Mm-hmm. Very cool. How are you this afternoon?
I am good. How about you?
I'm doing great. So your question was, can you guys suggest some best practices for Salesforce for Outlook? Great question. So I know that from attending some of the roadmap sessions, and also one of the project managers happens to be someone who I stay in touch with. There have been an awfully good amount of enhancements that have come into the product Salesforce for Outlook. Do either of you guys have it implemented, Steve or Susan?
we use it here. One thing that, as far as like a tip or a best practice, we do not sync contacts.
That was going to be my question. Would you recommend syncing contacts?
Well, we don't. Now, I haven't revisited it in the last release, but I know that when we had it enabled in the past, it did cause some problems with. I had a case where a user deleted a contact from their Outlook, and the record was deleted. Salesforce. There could be issues with like the winning record. I think in a previous release, again, I want to preface everything by saying we haven't even had contact sync on in quite a few updates to Salesforce for Outlook. So some of the issues that I'm talking about may have been resolved. It's just a case where we haven't revisited and reevaluated the newest versions of Salesforce for Outlook. But there was some data quality issues. If there was a contact in both Salesforce and in Outlook, and the record in Outlook was of not as great quality, it could actually
wipe out good data
it could dirty the Salesforce contact.
Correct. So how do you train the user who is like heavily dependent on Outlook today, and they're just implementing Salesforce? Like, how do you train the user where you're like, no, you have to create, even though you have a contact in Outlook, you still have to create it in Salesforce? Like, do you guys have any good training?
Well, one thing you can do is get an export of their Outlook contacts, and then mass import those. So don't rely or expect the user to have to do that. That excuse or that problem that they have out of their hands and solve it right away. Then you're just focused on how do you make it easy for them.
Yeah, Susan hit the nail right on the head.
Absolutely.
That will solve so many problems right up the front. It'll boost user adoption right off the bat, because you're taking a time-consuming, and even if it's not too time-consuming, a tedious task off the user's plate with the data import tools that are available to admins. Getting an Excel spreadsheet from somebody of their contact list from Outlook, that's relatively painless to them. You just send out a couple of screenshots with how to export their Outlook contacts into a CSV file. Send out an email blast to your users. Collect those CSV files, and then you're in control. You can look through the contacts and see like what's duplicates, what's crap, and then and then there's the bonus of like, hey, your contacts are magically in Salesforce. They're going to love you. You're going to be in control. It solves so many problems, and it also fosters user adoption. What Susan said about gathering the data and you doing the import. It solves so many problems right off the bat.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. But the next question that I have is, that's about contacts, but if you have activities in Outlook, like, if you want to associate emails, what is the best practice? Should it be a manual process? Every time they send out an email, they should associate, the email into Salesforce, because they want to track all the emails into Salesforce. And there is another question which will be after, once you guys answer this question to me, I will ask another question related to this. So what are the best practices for activities?
Go ahead, Josh.
I'll just take a stab at it. So I've seen a lot of customers when they install the tool, there's a save and send, save to Salesforce and send. That's pretty much the way that we've trained in the past to go ahead and add those into Salesforce. It's pretty much standard for people to do that. But obviously, you don't want every email inside of Salesforce. because obviously some of them might be internal. But where they are applicable makes sense. For instance, if there is an email that comes from your supervisor that is related to some type of approval or customer exception, then at that point in time, you'd also want to click on that email and add that directly to Salesforce. But when you add it to Salesforce, it will allow you to associate what it needs to be associated to, whether it be an opportunity or if it really is associated to a contact in itself. So, obviously when you're sending emails to customers, you want to be able to click on Save and Add to Salesforce. But even when there's an email within your inbox, you also want to be able to just click on it and maybe associate a miscellaneous email to there as well. Yeah, those are two things I wanted to mention. Susan, Steve?
We'll talk to the management team and get their input on what they want their sales reps to have. Obviously, some add that to Salesforce. But if the body, the content of the material is important, it's really simple to click that Add to Salesforce button when sending the email. Are you looking to implement Outlook for Salesforce, or do you have that now?
I am looking to implement Salesforce for Outlook.
Okay. And you can always, as the admin, set it up on your Outlook in your computer and get comfortable with it and test it out and make sure you've got it set up properly. Try setting up text to see if you like it. I don't typically recommend it, but it depends on your org, but give it a try.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would echo what Susan and Josh said, especially I know that when I've done user training, a lot of users actually don't want every email or event to automatically sync. I always use the analogy of maybe one of your contacts, you have a personal relationship with them, like you've stayed in touch after school or something like that. Now you have a business relationship. They may send you an email that's related to an SOW or an RFP, but then 2 hours later they may send you an email that's about an embarrassing story that happened to the two of you back when you were in school together. You don't want both those emails to arbitrarily just get synced because they're from a contact. You want to be able to pick and choose. And also, these emails are going to be attached to a record in Salesforce. They're going to be attached to an opportunity. They're going to be attached to an account. And so you don't want to clutter up the account or the activity or the opportunity detail page with every single email. Maybe you have an ongoing dialogue with somebody over the course of days or weeks, and then this is done through like a reply and comment, reply and comment, and then finally the 8th or 9th or 10th email in that exchange finally ties everything up. You can select that email to attach to the account or opportunity, and if that email has the complete thread, that will become the complete thread of that one activity that gets logged in Salesforce. So all the information is there, but you're not creating like 9 activity records, 10 activity records. And again, to echo what Susan said, I think that, again, the best thing to do is meet with the stakeholders and get their opinion of what their expectation is when they run a weekly or monthly team activity report. If their expectation is that they want to see every email, then okay, that's what they want, go down that road. But if they only want to see certain activities, certain meetings, I would tailor the user training that way.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, guys. So the next question that I have is a little bit tricky. So once they associate their email, to a contact in Salesforce, this email can be associated with multiple accounts. So when an email gets into the Salesforce, it's an activity, right? It gets into activity history. How do I associate that email to multiple accounts? And the second problem with this is one contact can move from one account to another account but I still want to relate that activity history to the previous account, not to the next account, the new account that contact is going to move to. So what I was thinking is create a custom object that will track, all these activities into this custom object. Do you think that's a good solution? I know that it's duplicating the data in the system.
So is the scenario that you have a business relationship with a person who works for, say, Microsoft, and then they leave Microsoft and they work for Apple. or IBM or some other company, and that company is also an account in Salesforce, and so you want to continue that relationship with that person, so they are now a new contact in the company that they work for now, and you want to preserve that activity history?
I want to preserve that activity history at Microsoft level, not at the new company, which is going to be either
There's
IBM or
a
Apple.
custom app out on the App Exchange, and it's free. I believe it's called Former Positions. And what that allows you to do is, I think it solves the activity history portion. I'm looking that up right now on the App Exchange, so I'll post the link. What I did on my org, I built something before Former Positions was published. I built my own ad hoc fix for this, and what I did is I created a custom lookup field on the contact record that allows you to connect one contact record to another contact record, and the way it works is if the person reappears at another company, you would create a new contact at that new company, and then using the lookup field, you would connect the old inactive contact to the active contact. And then on the contact detail page, I created a related list that catalogs all the inactive contacts, or basically the former positions that this person held, the account that they worked at, their title, and then you click on it, and it brings you into that old inactive contact record, and all of their activity, opportunity, and campaign history are still attached to the old account, the old contact. So you're not blurring the lines where, if you have one contact and you just drag them along from one account to the next account to the next account, well, that one contact record, he could now have an activity and opportunity history connected to him that have nothing to do with the company he's employed with now.
So you are suggesting to create duplicate contacts if
yeah, as much as I hate duplicates. Now, what I did do, I did a couple of things, though. I created a custom checkbox field on the contact record to identify whether that contact is actively employed at that company or not, and I created a custom record type and page layout for an inactive contact and an active contact. So the way that the information is presented on the screen to the user is different. I'll let Susan and Josh chime in. That was just the approach I took, and I'm not saying that it's the best fit for you or necessarily the be-all end-all solution.
Okay, yeah, no, that's one of the solutions that I might think about. Thank you.
And I'm on the App Exchange right now, pulling up the link for Former Positions. I'll include that in the chat.
Okay.
My only input would be that just take a look at really what we're trying to do. So, sort of native functionality to the plugin is going to associate an email to the contact record of that from address, right? Not necessarily to. So, in my previous implementations, I've always sort of proclaimed that a contact is a person at at one organization from a primary perspective, right? But if that contact at, let's say, Microsoft also has a role at different other accounts, maybe it be like, I don't know, it's not IBM, it's not HP, but if they sort of need to be implicit or explicitly associated with the other accounts, then I use contact roles to be able to say that this contact is also a part of this account, but he exists on another account. And that's how you get the same physical contact record to span across multiple accounts, right? So once you have that in place, the email is actually only associated to a physical Salesforce, what they call a who record, which is either in your case, it's going to be a contact. So by going to that contact, I'll be able to see all the activity contact that this is made. But if you want to be able to see it on the account levels of the activity, you've got to be able to make sure that the correct account is selected. And unfortunately, it's implicit, right? So if I have a contact, the account is selected in terms of what I see on the related activity list. But for historical purposes, if you understand the individual or what type of role to look for, you can always go to that individual record and see all of the accounts. But I'd be interested to know really what type of emails would you want to capture that apply to multiple accounts, because it's possible that they could possibly be stored someplace else.
So let's say that I got in touch with someone at Microsoft and I talked about a product which is related to two other companies also, and this person who works at Microsoft is affecting, or maybe he is influencing two other accounts. I want to see that email that I sent out to this guy at Microsoft. I also want to see that email at, let's say, HP and some other company, that this guy who is an influencer for HP and some other company, I sent out an email. So that means that even though this guy works for Microsoft, just because he is an influencer for two other accounts, I want to see that email for, in a related list for 3 accounts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So just to clarify, the email is only going to the one person at Microsoft. Mm-hmm. But Microsoft is probably going to turn around and have a conversation or a dialogue at some point with the other 2 accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You could rely on kind of the partner type philosophy. So Microsoft is a partner, an influencer, if you will, with these other 2 companies. So to log that email, you can do basically a lookup field on your activity, and then you can select what other companies it belongs to.
As of now, I cannot create a lookup on activity object, and even like with Winter 15 release, it's going to let me create lookup to one object at a time. So if there were 2 accounts, how would I create a lookup on activity object?
Is the relationship known in advance? Is it pretty stagnant? Has it changed that much over time?
It might not change over time.
There is still a limitation on the task object, right, where you can or cannot add lookups. Has that been improved recently?
Mhm.
Okay, that's nice to know.
So with Winter 15 release, you would be able to create lookup, but you can create lookup to an object like only one. So you cannot have 2 lookups on activity object that are looking up to accounts. You can only have 1 lookup. So that's why I was thinking that I might have to duplicate records, and I might have to create a custom object to track the activities that matter, for 3 accounts. But I was just wondering if you guys had any other suggestions.
You can add activity to more than one contact.
Right.
But are you talking, when you say account, you really just mean account, you don't have a contact record for them?
Mhm.
And what about the concept of opportunities? Because you could, in most situations, a sales team is talking, let's just use the Microsoft example, they're talking with Microsoft about this opportunity that they're both working towards for, I can't think of anything original today, let's say for Dell, so they're both working on the Dell opportunity. If you associate, what most people are doing is they're associating that activity with Microsoft under the Dell opportunity.
Right, but it's just the same problem again, where is that, activity is influencing 3 opportunities. How am I going to relate that activity to 3 opportunities? Because I can only do it for 1 opportunity.
An interesting problem. I guess no one really likes to duplicate data, but it sounds like it's an interesting use case because the fact that you just want it there for basically historical purposes, so someone can look at. But there's no easy way to. You want to be able to have a way to define it as well. So, if the account is the right place, I'm not sure what the interface looks like, but it might just be you attach the email to it, 3 times. I think the alternative to that would be creating some type of visual force page that populates a custom object that sort of ties it together. But anytime you introduce that, it could, even as the duplicate numbers, it could skew that you're reporting in terms of activity because one email is now showing 3 times. But the easiest way that'd be out of the box to basically identify the accounts you sent the email to is going to be able, the ability to attach it 2 or 3 times. But again, it's 3 separate emails, so 3 separate places. They're there once. You also have to take a look at, the volume of times it happened because over time it could be a storage issue, or maybe it's just a process thing where it's maybe you don't need to store these specific emails. It depends if the content of these emails actually can be referenced. Maybe it's just some type of mechanism inside of Salesforce where you just say that you sent this type of message to these organizations or something of that nature. So you still store the action happening without needing to actually store the physical email. So that could be an option as well. If there's a process and you send, maybe it's a process. You may create 2 objects inside of Salesforce and say the header object is this is what I did, and then the child object to it would be I did it for this account, and then you create another child object, you did it for account B, another child object or record, and you say did it for C. So that way you are still collecting the action that you're doing and the accounts in which you did it for without necessarily having to store the email. But that's just another alternative if that works out for you. If the content of the email is not important in that case.
In this case, concept of email is important, and just because they're sending out emails from their Outlook, they want to easily take that email and associate to a contact in Salesforce and then see with this email how many accounts they have influenced. But it starts from Outlook, and just because they want to use Outlook and not duplicate efforts in Salesforce, again, if they're sending out an email from Outlook, if I ask them that, no, even if you sent out an email from Outlook, you still have to go in Salesforce and create 2 records, that's going to be duplicating efforts, from the user's perspective. So,
yeah, it's tough, and I haven't played around with it. It would be nice, as enough it does it today, if once the task gets created, it used to be 4, but it would take you to that task. And so, depending on how frequently this happens, I think that I would probably just create some type of button in Visualforce page on the task that says attached to multiple accounts, and then do some Apex in the background to say, add this task to these other accounts as well. But obviously you're talking about a Visualforce user interface, some Apex code on the back end, and a button to actually register that. I mean, that would be like sort of like a good way to do it if it was just that simple. But I think once you start thinking about that, you start thinking about all the other things that people want to attach to multiple accounts there are just not activities or just not emails. And that's sort of like a bigger problem, especially when you get into parent-child hierarchy with across accounts. They're not all the same level. That one might keep me up tonight. Not really sure what the best way is, but hopefully you've been able to identify some options.
But the thing with that approach also is, let's say that, I had a button on task record that I want to associate this task to 3 other accounts. How would I do it with Apex? Because you can't create a lookup. That's the basic problem. So if I didn't have a lookup to create, how would I associate that task with 3 other accounts?
Yeah, so basically it would basically take the task you're on and duplicate it and change the account.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. But I guess with the custom object solution that I was thinking, and I know that it's duplicating, the data, but the custom object solution will solve my other problem, which is a contact moving from one account to another account, because I'm still keeping the activity history, in that custom object. So all my reporting will be done on this custom object, which I might call event log, and not do any reporting based on activity. So even though when a contact moves from one account to another account and the activity moves from one account to another account, I'm still, on the page layout, I'm still going to show my users only this relative list called event log, which is a custom object. So
yeah, but I'd also question the custom object and how that would interface correctly with the Salesforce Outlook, because it tends to be the Salesforce Outlook plugin will probably be best well suited for let's call it native objects, right? So it's gonna interface well with contacts, leads, and maybe opportunities. But outside of that, it might not be easily integrated. And then when you look at reporting, it's not all encapsulated, right? And I mean, to be clear, maybe it's not duplicating the task. Maybe it's creating tasks that reference the original task, so that you can clearly identify which tasks are the references and which one is the actual task. And there's obviously links between all of them. But it's not, I see this message here and it's the same thing. I think that there's probably some opportunity you have to connect all of them together rather than just clearly duplicating them. And that's if you were to use Apex code to do that. Do you have development resources? Have you talked about this with them?
Not yet, no.
On the face, it looks like something pretty straightforward, but I think if you have this concept for email, you'll have it for other things. And I think that's what you want to get to the bottom of it before you do something very customized for activities and emails.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to second that. I would spend some serious time giving thought to how everything affects this whole partner kind of relationship that you have. And you're not the only one that has this. So there's a couple of different options that you can take. You'll just have to really give it some thought. If you hopefully have a sandbox that you can play around with things and try different things out. Oftentimes the first solution you think of isn't always the best one. So yeah, think of everything, test it out thoroughly before you move too far ahead.
Okay.
Cool. And our last caller, Yeah, no problem. Libby, do you have anything?
No, she's with me, so both of us work for the same company, and we don't. No, she doesn't have any other questions.
Okay, cool. Any other questions out there? I hope this the questions we answered so far should be helpful to all of you.
It was definitely helpful. Thank you, guys.
And no problem. That's what the community is all about. Cool. Well, just a special shout out to Susan and Steve for joining and participating. Love to see the input that you guys continue to bring to the community. And Jared will be back in 2 weeks. He'll get the invites out and also schedule a call when he's back from holiday. But thanks so much for attending, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. Have a good one. Cheers.
Hope we see you at Dreamforce.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.